Okay, I'm here. I'm smoking a little Newminster 403. Got some thoughts to put down here on paper. This laptop is done. It's an MSI laptop. The something's loose in there, and the other night I heard the Wi-Fi card frying, and my Wi-Fi went out. So, uh, hopefully, prices of computers are going down. So we have the Super Bowl, which I'm not watching right now. I saw the first half. The halftime performance was really meh, and the commercials are really bleh. Like really, not beyond that. The commercials are actually kind of pathetic. But you know what do people expect? Hollywood is dying. Hollywood is an institution. As an institution, is dying, like all institutions eventually do. It's the you know it's their time. It's their time to go, and not a moment too soon either. They've done a lot of damage with their propaganda and their partnership with the government, and they besides thanking themselves for their demise, they can thank the government for coming in and manipulating the arts to their desires, and then destroying the Hollywood's artistic creativity and innovation. So, um, so the Super Bowl is really indicative of how the media is just absolutely dying. Um, so we have another indication of just how desperate the media, especially the news media, is for ratings, and that's these balloon incidents. And then to now they're implying it's a UFO incident. So that's a little bizarre and strange. I mean, the UFO thing was bizarre enough. Uh, Making such a big deal over a balloon, whether it's a weather balloon or a spy balloon, just shows you that the media is really desperate for ratings, that their handlers, in the administration and all of these actors in the court, in the private sector and public sector, are desperate to cause a panic, because they're panicking, and they're panicking because they know they're losing control. And they want to and they want to try and distract people as much as possible. Obviously, it's obvious. So they're, so it's just been really bizarre. And then you have the UFO thing today they're talking about, and everybody's talking about this UFO thing. And it's just like, I find it incredible, mainly, and first of all, that our government is going to be able to shoot down an alien vessel with an F-22. And the fact that Americans are so codependent on their government that they actually think Big Daddy government would be able to shoot down an alien vessel, it's just pathetic. It's pathetic that people actually believe that. But I find it incredible, and it just looks like more grasping for straws from the media and even from the government. I think the government is fine with them implying it's UFO, because anything to distract from things like what's going on in Ohio and just how disastrous the Ukraine war is turning out. Okay, anything to distract from these things. I think they're going to take it, and the government's in this. The government, the powers that be, from the government actors to the private actors that control them, are caught in this vicious cycle that they can't get out of, and it's a cycle of bullshitting to cover up their previous bullshit. It's kind of like when a child starts lying, and immediately the child is lying, and then they try to cover up those lies with more lies, and it just gets absolutely ridiculous. So hopefully we don't have a major tantrum coming out of the government, like a lot of children are prone to do when they realize they can't get out of the lies. A lot of children will throw a fit. Hopefully, I mean, I think it's actually pretty accurate generally to compare the institutional behavior to that of a child. And I've said many times before, when you're talking about when you're talking about aggregates of human beings and institutions and people in positions of power, their behavior is always going to be more instinctual than rational, and there's just simply no way around that. That's because human behavior, especially on an aggregate level, becomes instinctual. Collectively, humans behave instinctually. That's how you have, protests and such that seem to spontaneously get violent, and that's the animal instinct in the collective coming out. Because the individual rational voices within the aggregate are not enough to suppress that instinctual behavior. And in the case of people in positions of power, okay, they're also going to behave more instinctually because everything becomes about maintaining the positions that they have. Okay, so they're not able to make as much rational choices as someone who doesn't have as much to lose, if you want to call it, if you want to, call it a lot to lose. So we're seeing this instinctual behavior of this rabid animal that we call our political system, and it's just going rabid. It's really fun to watch. I said 3 years ago, it's on a Facebook page that I got locked out of, that the government is going to continue to delegitimize itself, okay? It can't do otherwise, okay? And all we have to do as advocates of decentralization is sit back, grab some popcorn, and watch the show. And nobody's going to be able to stop this process at this point. I think we're over the hill and we're going downhill at this point. And it has to happen to every powerful country in history at some point. Doesn't mean it's the end of our lives, the end of the United States. It just means that the United States is going through what you can say is like a midlife crisis. So the media is very indicative of that. The government is just an absolute shit show. And that's good, because the only way we can take power back away from the government is to let them dig the hole for themselves. The more we try actively to change the government, I mean, there's things we can do. There's protest movements. I wanted to talk about one of those in a minute. There's protest movements. There's all sorts of advocacy we can do. But at some point, you also have to let the process of this disease that is afflicting not only the government, but our entire society, you have to let it run its course. And the stronger you push into it, the stronger it's going to push back. But if you just sit back and let the rabid animal thrash about, it'll eventually succumb to its disease, to its illness. And that's what we're watching right now, the same process that has happened over and over in history. So we have Rage Against the War Machine coming up. I'm going to be heading over to that. And I really feel like the stars are aligning for this one. There's just been a lot of negative sentiment in the war. You're seeing articles pop out in all sorts of very mainstream publications that are getting highly critical of the way this thing is being managed. Now, I knew it would be a disaster from the start, but even I didn't realize how much of a disaster it would be. I kind of figured in the beginning, because I did a video about this before the war even happened. And I said in that video, I didn't believe that the Russians were going to invade. But I said, if they do invade and if the United States gets involved or whatever, I said something like that, it's going to be a disaster for the United States. Why is that? It's very simple. One thing, the most important factor in any war is leadership and morale. Okay, the United States has a huge crisis in leadership right now. And Ukraine never had any leadership. Okay, they're, generally very corrupt countries like Ukraine don't really prosecute wars effectively. In the United States and Britain being the advisors of the Ukrainians and really controlling the war at a top end level is not helpful in the least. As a matter of fact, it made the situation for Ukraine much worse because, as we know, the Russians and the Ukrainians were sitting down. The Russians were there in good faith, and we don't know exactly what happened, but the Ukrainians decided in the middle of the negotiations back in November that was the end of it. And many, many people, there's a lot of evidence to support the belief that many hold that the United States and Britain directly intervened and made Ukraine leave the negotiations by promising them unlimited support, I'm sure. And what ended up happening is it prolonged the war, led to the deaths of another probably 150, 200,000 people have died since April just in the Ukrainian army alone. And then the whatever assistance we provided to Ukraine was marginal at best. And we're going to do, as the United States, what we've done to so many other countries. Okay, we push them into a war, we promise them the moon, and then when things go bad, we're going to turn tail and run. Is what we're going to do. We're even going to pretend like it never happened. They're already trying to do that. Even though government officials have admitted over and over, whether they be in Ukraine or in the United States, have admitted over and over that the United States is directly involved in this. Okay, when the dust settles, the United States leadership is going to pretend like they're going to downplay their involvement. But this is, I think what I'm feeling and what I don't think most people in the United States don't understand at all because they don't understand how important foreign relations are. They haven't had to in their entire lives because the United States has been the top dog. But top dogs always get taken down eventually. And the thing is Americans are going to learn very soon why foreign relations are extremely important. The United States is not going to be able to bully its way into getting whatever it wants anymore. And really, I think the diplomatic repercussions of this are going to be are gonna reverberate for a generation at least. No one in the world trusts us now. I mean, this was probably one of the most brazen and depraved U.S. foreign policy actions since Vietnam. And the rest of the world, they're not. See, the thing is, they may be able to control the boomers and the people who still trust the mainstream media in the United States and Europe. But 80% of the world does not live in the United States or Europe. Okay, and their economies are growing and growing at a fast pace in a lot of these countries, including in Russia. They say, I think it was one of the major IMF. The IMF said that this year, despite the sanctions, Russia's economy is going to grow. While at the same time, Europe's economies are all going to contract this year. Okay, so it's been such a disaster just based on that. And, as the true information comes out of just how many people have died in this and just how many people's lives were destroyed. An entire country was destroyed. Nobody in the world is going to ever seriously trust the United States ever again, especially not Russia. We might as well forget about talking to Russia, at least until a new president comes in. And even then, I don't think it's going to be easy. Because Vladimir Putin said this in the past. Vladimir Putin said in his interviews with Oliver Stone that it doesn't matter who the president is because the people that are actually controlling it are not the president. People actually controlling foreign policy, he said, people in black suits or something like that, right? So with this Ukraine war being so bad, then you have this issue in Ohio. I don't know what to make of that just yet. It seems like there's definitely a media blackout going on with that, but who knows how much that's being exaggerated. I'll reserve my judgment on that. Then you have, so it's no wonder that, with the media's ratings falling apart, which, going back to, what I think is a short on a company like Comcast, buying puts on Comcast may be a lucrative trade. I'm considering it. The only plays I got in right now are in the bond market, because the bond market has been, let's just say, more rational and more predictable than the stock market. So it's more based on actual fundamentals than the stock market. And it's easy because you're just dealing with treasuries. You go get an ETF in treasuries, or you go get an ETF in JNK, and that's how you play the bond market. It's relatively easy. It's not, you just have to get over the initial difficulties understanding bonds and how they work and why they're important. But there's that. So with all of this going on, the media falling apart, Oscars among the lowest rated in history. I'm sure the Super Bowl will probably bring in decent ratings. It's like the one last vestige of that dying American culture that we all treasure, that is still popular, is still overwhelmingly popular. With the administration falling apart, the president, is basically incapacitated. The president doesn't have the capacity to do even basic things, I'm sure. It's very fitting that, a very senile old man who is extremely incompetent and corrupt is the president of the United States, while it's declining. Okay, although it has been declining for some time. Trump was also indicative of that. So it's no wonder that they're promoting the idea that there's UFOs flying over Michigan. But this, the whole idea that if whoever believes that the government would actually be able to shoot down an alien vessel that has traveled an interstellar distance to get here using technology we couldn't even begin to imagine, and the idea that the United States government is going to shoot that down, that's just pathetic. That's absolutely pathetic. It just goes to show you how many people are still completely codependent. They look at the government as their daddy, and it's really sad. And this happens in a lot of declining empires. You had the bread and circuses of Rome, all of the crazy decadence that was going on in the Netherlands. There's, how, even the Mongol Empire eventually got soft and decadent, and that's why it eventually fell apart. So it happens to every empire. People just need to accept it, and also to fortify. We need to fortify against the rise of a demagogue that takes advantage of people's insecurities, which is going to happen. Although I remain optimistic because we have such pathetic leadership in this country. I don't see anybody that can really, fill that role, at least not effectively. If aliens, I was just trying to think of scenarios a minute ago. If they were aliens, are they here because we're about to have a nuclear war, because we're very close to a nuclear war? I was just had this whole scenario going on in my head where it's like, well, the aliens are going to stop us from blowing ourselves up, hopefully, because, probably intelligent life, civilized life is probably very rare in the universe. So maybe they're going to step in and, prevent us from doing it because, they don't want to, the universe is lonely enough as it is. I was hoping they'd come on my birthday. There was an article in the India Times in which they said that some fortune teller, some person who says he can see the future, said that the aliens were going to come on my birthday. And I was actually pretty stoked. And unfortunately, it didn't happen. So I'm still kind of disappointed by that. But there's a lot going on. Markets, I don't see anything. I mean, there's a little momentum in the stock market, so maybe it'll go up a little bit. I don't even know what futures are right now. Let's look at futures real quick. On futures, there was the whole thing Steve Van Meter was talking about, that Credit Suisse is having issues. They've been having issues for a while, though. But what people don't realize about this whole situation is that what's really happening right now is that people are losing their faith in what's now, for many of them, their God, which is the government. They're losing their faith in it. The power of government rests solely in its legitimacy in the eyes of the people. And once the government loses that, there's nothing that can be done. It's going to shit. It's going to fall apart, and something new will take its place, for better or for worse. I mean, if we look into history, just off the top of my head, most of the time it's for the worst. The Weimar Republic falls apart, you get Hitler. I just don't think we have anybody with the strength of character. Even if they're an evil person, they can have a very strong will and strength of character, but I don't see anybody in the United States that could fill that role. I mean, we have such this endemic cultural malaise, and it's basically our culture is pathetic, and the people are rather pathetic, and so I don't see a strong leader coming out. The strongest one, unfortunately, I see right now is DeSantis. And what DeSantis is going to do, if he gets elected, is he's going to try and cobble together the war machine, and keep the war machine going for a little bit longer. That's what he's going to do. Okay, that's already decided, I'm sure. But it doesn't really matter who the president is at the end of the day. This house of cards is falling apart, and they know it. Okay. And, some of them are probably just in the looting phase. They're just trying to get as much as they can out of their, positions of power, and then they're going to turn tail and run, because that's what the government always does when shit hits the fan. Government politicians and bureaucrats are always going to turn tail and run. If they can't effectively blame anybody else, they're going to turn tail and run. And all of these people that are expected the government to, take care of situations are going to be sorely disappointed. So what are futures doing? I don't have. Oh, there goes Yahoo Finance. Futures are down some. So yeah, I think we have. Maybe it's probably going to go sideways this week, but I could see a little bit of upside potential. Most people are saying by the second half of the year, things are going to turn south. I don't know where they get that from. I am not underestimating their ability, the ability of the Fed and the Wall Street people that they're in cahoots with, to kick the can down the road. Another year, another two. Okay, all it's going to do is prolong our suffering. But yeah, we are in a crazy time, a time of change, a fourth turning, whatever you want to call it. So these are my thoughts. I think I'm good, and I am out.